As you can hear, we're now being recorded. You should get a notification of that as well on your screen. During the presentation, all attendees are going to be on mute and have their cameras disabled. We have folks joining us today via the internet and via the phone, like I mentioned, and everyone will be able to participate in the Q&A at the end of this session. So we do want to just note that that Q&A function at the bottom of your screen is the best way to answer questions. We encourage you to type in any questions you have during the presentation. We'll plan to answer most questions live at the end of the presentation. I'll answer this first question received and say that I have a virtual background. I'm coming to you from my basement today, but this is SRF's new office space that we have as a virtual background. So do wish that I could get a little more snow, but nice to have some sunshine in the background. I'd say anytime you can take that. So those are our meeting protocols. If at any time you would like, please go ahead and type in your questions and we'll visit them after the presentation. With that, I will pass it over to Craig to touch on our agenda tonight.
All righty. Thank you, Dan. Thank you. I am coming to you from my basement, actually, so I am not using a fancy background as Dan. Once again, thank you, everyone, for joining us this evening. Our agenda tonight is we'll go through some brief welcome and introductions. As Dan has already started, we'll introduce ourselves briefly, or I'll introduce our team. We'll go over a project overview and introduction of the public realm elements, describing what public realm means to us and how we're looking to implement it as part of this project. We'll talk through what is public art within the public realm space, and then work through a number of slides relevant to roadways in the public realm space that we're dealing with as part of this project, whether that being specifically the upper and lower Dowling, the I-94 bridge section along Dowling, the parkway extent adjacent to the river, and then 33rd Avenue. I'll be going over that some more detail here shortly as well. And then as Dan pointed out, we'll work through hopefully an opportunity to chat with you all, answer some questions, and give you some feedback, and also receive feedback from you regarding our presentation this evening. Okay. Briefly, rather than each of us introduce ourselves, I'll have the honor of introducing our team that we have here tonight as panelists. There are other members of our, what we termed ourselves, the Upper Harbor Collaborative. So we are working as an extension of City of Minneapolis staff on this project here on the public realm space. Myself, Craig Vaughn, and Dan McNeil are with SRF Consulting Group. Working with the collaborative. We have Kristen Murray and Preston Dorset here this evening with us. Nico Kubota is one of our other juxtaposition arts representatives, as a member of our team. He's in the, I believe he's here with us in the room or on the attendee side, just the same. So we welcome Nico. And then we have Ciara Schlichting with Tool Design Group and Lissa Washington with Formula Architecture, working as an extension of our Upper Harbor Terminal Collaborative. We are an extension of City of Minneapolis staff. We have Alexander Cato and Nathan Koster guiding the ship here, as well as our project management team with the City of Minneapolis. With that being said, let's just dive right in. So from a site and connection standpoint, it's never lost on me that it doesn't hurt just to kind of orient ourselves. We know we are talking about the Upper Harbor Terminal site here this evening, and this project is not specifically about the site development itself. That's a separate project aside. Our project this evening is focused on what we are terming the public infrastructure, roadways, utilities, as well as that public realm space just outside the curb edge or outside of the roadway, and how people will arrive at the site and how people will hopefully experience the site on their way to that. So the things I want to highlight once again are the Upper Harbor Terminal site, as I mentioned, but not only the components that we'll be focusing on along Dowling and the parkway through the site and 33rd, those being our main focus, but understanding that there's a broader context here in how folks are likely to arrive at the site, either from Northeast Minneapolis or communities in the north side, with 42nd Avenue, the Grand Rounds, Lowry Avenue, et cetera, right? For how we are going to have a shared experience of getting to the project site. From a public realm infrastructure project area standpoint, zooming in a little bit closer, as I mentioned, let's just remind ourselves once again, what we're looking at and what our area of interest is relevant to Dowling Avenue coming into the site from the north side. The intersection, the pretty important intersection you're going to hear some of our staff talk about here shortly, is that Washington Avenue, Second Street North intersection that intersects with Dowling. We'll talk quite a bit at length about the bridge section over I-94 as well. And then as we proceed into the site, how we're tying into the existing and future parkway area that will be improved upon and extended further on down to the south end of the site, tying in the 33rd. And my colleagues here will expand on that a little bit later on. You know, we're looking to provide a connected transportation system that's complementary of our public utilities and prioritizing safe, convenient pedestrian and bicycle connections for folks to arrive at the site. And we want to make sure to offer a riverfront-oriented experience with a focus on innovative stormwater solutions so that we can integrate with the built environment in a sustainable practice and way. There's been a lot of engagement that's occurred already as part of the Upper Harbor Terminal site development itself, and we want to be sure to honor that as part of our experience in getting involved and working through the public realm infrastructure component of that and how people get to the site. So there's a number of things that we've heard or that we have taken from that outreach and engagement that has occurred up to this point from the standpoint of what we've heard. You know, design and build and support public spaces that prioritize inclusivity and community ownership for Northside residents, or offering a riverfront oriented experience with a focus on green infrastructure. That was one of the things I highlighted on the previous slide. Focusing on multimodal transportation that's safe and attractive, and promoting a transportation-based community-owned business opportunities as part of not only the site development itself, but also potentially with respect to, the public art and the public realm space leading to the site. And, you know, that only highlights, once again, we'd like to highlight our intent and goals with the project to ensure project info is readily available and that things are easily accessible by the public and the community. Strengthen our relationship between the diverse demographics of North Minneapolis community and the project team and project stakeholders, you know, and engage in transparent, honest conversations about what we have the opportunity to affect change with, as well as how your input will be utilized as part of the project. And ensure all public questions and concerns are heard regarding the overall project while centering back on the public realm and infrastructure, making sure that it's relevant to, like I just mentioned, what we have the opportunity to affect change on and what our, you know, is in our control here with respect to how people arrive at the site and hopefully experience the site. So we want to hear from you. There's a number of different ways in which we're looking to engage. Our team has already actually this month here been, prior to tonight's public open house, been engaging with members of the community through focus group engagement, whereby we've developed 5 different focus groups around different community members. We'd like you also have an opportunity to visit the project website to complete a survey, an interactive wiki map or push pin opportunity to share with us your issues and needs and different comments about how you might arrive at the site, and sign up for our Upper Harbor Terminal government delivery sign up through email to stay informed about upcoming engagement that we'll be having in March as well, beyond tonight's activities. So there's a whole host of different ways in which we're looking to engage with the community. With that, we're going to start diving into some of the specifics about the public realm. The next couple of slides will be centered around just some high-level overview of what it is we're talking about here with public realm and public art. I'll ask my colleague Alyssa here to take over.
Great, thanks, Craig. So what is public realm? We're going to start talking about what that is. They're the components that bring a place to life, bringing a uniqueness that's leading into and through the Upper Harbor Terminal site. This first image is a representative of a commercial intersection, a little bit busier with if you see the building at the top corner there, having an opportunity for a little bit of public art, and clearly identified crosswalks for safe transit across the street, transitioning, excuse me, across the street. And opportunities, I will say at number 5 for a mobility hub. So you see around the city all the bikes and the scooters and whatnot. Also, opportunities to use those items along the pathways that are flanking each side of the street there, allowing for a more robust transit features. Facilities, I guess is the more proper way to say it, but the opportunity for resting and for actually being able to participate in the transit system. Also, other identifiers are like banners, wayfinding signage, things like that. So I would say from there, we can talk a little bit more about the residential context. So a few other examples would be, again, let's start with crossing the street. There are these opportunities to do these raised crossways. So they're just a little bit bumped up. I think you've probably seen them around other parts of the city. That gets people keep up just a little bit higher, slows the traffic down at the intersection so that there's a real stop and opportunity for people to cross. A parklet is an opportunity to create a space for natural gathering, which is over there in the corner. On-street parking opportunities as well, and that narrowing of those crossing the street there. So this idea of creating this transition in space. Also, I would say a pedestrian scale lighting. I mean, we identify the idea of bringing the lights down to people height so that you want to walk on that sidewalk, you want to bike on those roads. So these are just representations of possibilities and opportunities along Dowling and the streets that cross Dowling. So from there, we actually were able to have a live and working intersection with Juxtaposition Arts, and I'm gonna let them talk a little bit about their space, and I want to put a plug in for the great work that they've done on a video that we have presented in other formats. And I'm gonna ask Dan to put the link up, and so everyone is aware of that. And also it is on the website. So with that, I'll let Kristen speak.
Thanks, Lissa. Hi, everyone. Kristen from Juxta. Good evening to everybody. So here's an example of kind of public realm, in real life, just outside of where I'm sitting right now, right at the corner of Emerson and Broadway. So the Juxta Skate Plaza has, and the intersection of Emerson and Broadway has a lot of public realm features. For some benches, parklet, public art like the mural you see. There's rain gardens and plant features to infiltrate stormwater, deal with runoff in a way that actually protects and cleans the water before it gets to the Mississippi River. There's transit. Really active bus stop right there at Emerson and Broadway. You can see bike lanes and crosswalks, as well as, of course, sidewalk and road and everything. So all these features are part of the public realm. And I think next up, we're going to talk about public art opportunities, which is one of the roles that we're playing in this project. And I'll hand it over to Preston.
Yeah, so thanks, Kristen. What we're really trying to do is think about using the infrastructure and integrating art into things like the storm drains, pavement, the colored pavers, concrete, guardrails. I don't know if any of you are familiar with Heritage Park, but when they were building that, worked with Seytu Jones. So there's a lot of really good examples there. So that's sort of the, how, and then this is the what. So we developed these themes originally for the Upper Harbor Terminal Park, and we're just using them as a starting point to then, add to for what we're going to do with the infrastructure that then reaches into the neighborhood. So that would be integrated into the walkways and roads. And those themes are histories of ecological harm and disconnection from this place. So ways that Native communities, Black communities, and communities of color have connected to and been disconnected from the river. We have environmental justice work and vision, ways that environmental justice organizing is shaping the Northside riverfront. artist appropriation of the Upper Harbor Terminal site. So aerosol artists making their mark on the UHT and its role in imagining a park, settlement history of the North Side, histories and presence of the North Side's diverse communities, and then lastly, food sovereignty in Black, Native, and POC communities.
So like Preston mentioned, we've been working on we've used these themes in planning work that we're doing for public art in the park for Upper Harbor Terminal, which is a separate project, but of course all part of the public realm. And so we're using this as a starting point for thinking about the stories that the art can tell through the public realm infrastructure and connecting between the Upper Harbor Terminal and the river and Northside neighborhoods. And so one of the things we're interested is hearing from you all about how these things resonate as you think about getting to Upper Harbor Terminal and the river, and if there's specific stories or specific things that you feel like should be told through the public art. And I'll pass it on now.
Hey everyone, hoping I'm coming in clearly. Kristen and Preston, thanks for that great overview of the public art and a lot of the pieces at play within this project. Another very critical piece, when we think about public infrastructure, we often think about the roadway, those things above ground, but there's also a huge component, which is the public utilities. So providing electricity, providing running water, providing an active sanitary system to remove waste. This project also includes all of those components and also storm infrastructure. We are going to be providing storm infrastructure specifically on the site. That would include potentially tree trenches, bioretention swales, and basins to capture, treat, and convey stormwater. Stormwater is typically a runoff water from rain and then also from snow melt. And this project provides a significant opportunity to capture, treat, and convey that before it enters the Mississippi River. Just a reminder for today, we're not going to be providing any concepts. We're only at a 10% design. When we come back at our next open house in March, we'll have more relevant examples that we can share and get feedback from the public on. But just wanted to highlight this to you all now, just so you get a sense of the scope of this project and have an earmarker for the next time we come back. And also with that, we're also exploring a district system or a regional system. So district system would be for on-site, a regional system would be capturing, treating, conveying stormwater outside of the UHT site as well. So more to come on that in March. Next slide, please. So now we're going to talk about Upper Dowling. And the naming convention for this is a little bit straightforward, but Upper Dowling, if you've been over in the Dowling-Lindale area of the site, you know that it's at a higher elevation. And as you travel east across Dowling into the site, you see that you start to get lower and lower as you get to the river. So we just labeled from Dowling to the bridge Upper Dowling, just from simplicity standpoint. This is a rendering of Dowling right around the Lindale area. We're proposing having a sidewalk on the north side of the street, providing a bit of boulevard greeting space. If you've been to this part of Dowling, you know right now that there's just a sidewalk back a curb, so there's no real separation from vehicle traffic, so providing a little bit of a boulevard there. On the south side, we have the multi-use trail, which would be split between cyclists, or would be shared between cyclists and pedestrians, and also have a bit of boulevard space there as well. If we transition to the next slide, you'll see the conceptual design layout. This is just our proposed design. We're still, working through this and getting feedback, but you can see how this looks schematically. We have a 6-foot sidewalk to the north, the 10-foot shared use path to the south. This treatment, as indicated, would start at Lindale and travel east into the site. We are also working through our CIPs in 2025 to extend this treatment west to Thomas Avenue North, which is about another 1.2 miles. So ideally, we're able to provide this off-street bike trail system similar to what's on 26th Avenue North and provide a strong west-east connection point. We're also including right at 6th Street space for the existing transit line, the 721, which travels over here. So we're providing space for there and a boulevard and some benches and other things in coordination with Metro Transit. We've also been working with Tool Design Group. They've been assisting in a lot of the bike and ped and vehicle design. And my colleague Ciara is on the phone. Ciara, do you want to just provide any further commentary on the Upper Dowling piece?
Yeah, I would say in our design, our goal was to really make this a safe and welcoming environment for people walking and biking to the Upper Harbor Terminal site, of course, driving as well. And so what you see there are some improvements that really enhance the safety. So we mentioned the curb extensions that really shortens the crossing distance for people walking and biking. There's also, as Lissa was mentioning, a proposed raised crossing of that multi-use trail as it goes over 6th Street. So to make sure the cars know to stop for people walking and biking. And then I wanted to mention that in this area, because it is a constrained environment, it is a multi-use trail. But as we cross the on-off ramps to I-94, we do have a little bit more space to then separate people walking and biking to have their own place all the way down to the Upper Harbor terminal site. So those are just a couple of things I wanted to highlight about the design. And then as well, talking about the public art integration, even though you see green on the graphic, that doesn't necessarily mean, you know, grass or plants. That could be integrated public art and storytelling. It's kind of the canvas, if you will, for potential public art integration. Thanks.
Thank you, Ciara. Just one other thing to add. In terms of operating within our existing right-of-way, that is the sidewalk, curb, and street, and that is the city property. With the reconstruction, we will not be taking any additional property in terms of taking away houses, taking away lawns, or anything of that nature. So we are really operating within our right-of-way. It is very constrained, but just wanted to call that. There's been questions on, is the city taking property away or houses away in this area? And we are absolutely not doing that. So I just wanted to be very clear about that. And as we transition to the east, can we go to the next slide, please? So I'm sure many folks on this call have crossed the Dowling Bridge today and know that it's a challenging intersection. The bicycle lane is on street. We have a narrow sidewalk space, and there's a lot of vehicle activity. And so we did a lot of site visits, a lot of engagement, and started working through, you know, what type of treatment options could we provide. Next slide, please. And we are still working with MnDOT, the Minnesota Department of Transportation, who owns the bridge. At a minimum, we'd be able to provide a treatment like the bottom left image. That is actually a screenshot of 26th Avenue North. It's a little difficult to tell from the picture, but that is a two-way bike facility. This treatment is on the north side of the street. And so in theory, with the Dowling Avenue Bridge, we would have that treatment on the south side of the street. So those cyclists and pedestrians that started their trip on Dowling and Lindale, continuing eastward, would be able to continue across the bridge, either on the sidewalk if they're walkers, or in the separated facility if they're cyclists. This is what we would consider a minimum treatment. Conversations are ongoing with MnDOT to see if we can add a robust treatment option. The image on the bottom right shows a bit more of an artistic physical separation, so that's something we are considering. When we come back in March, we'll have a more definitive treatment option. So this is still an ongoing conversation, but just wanted to highlight how we're moving through that, that process. Next slide, please. So this is, as you cross the bridge, you get to Washington. I'm sure many folks as well have been cyclists, pedestrians, or motorists in this area, and there's a lot of challenges with our design treatment that we are proposing on the next slide. We have fixed the skew of the intersection. We have separated cyclists from pedestrians. So on the south side, you see a two-way bicycle track. And then you see below that a separate sidewalk that continues eastward into the site. There's also a lot of boulevard greening space on all legs of the intersection. Another treatment option that we are proposing here is some north-south bicycle connectivity. So if you look at the northeastern leg of the intersection, you see a two-way proposed facility as well. That'd be a two-way cycle track and then a separate sidewalk. And the idea is that this treatment would extend about 100 feet north of the intersection. So we wouldn't be reconstructing north of this area, but In conversations with Hennepin County, we are working through a potential continuation of that treatment in the future to connect into Weber Camden 44 and then also into North Mississippi Regional Parkway. Those discussions are still ongoing. And the same thought is similar to the south. You see that two-way bicycle facility on the east side of the road. And the intention was that with that is that it would continue about 100, 200 feet south. And then long-term, we'd be able to connect that with the 2nd Street North bicycle facilities. And that would also connect into Lowry Avenue North and the Lowry Avenue Bridge. I'm going to transition it to Ciara if she has any additional technical context with this intersection.
Yeah, I'll just add that Washington and Dowling were identified as higher injury streets in the city's Vision Zero plan. And so we really had an eye for improving safety for people walking and biking. And with a little more space here, as you can see, the modes are separated and there's green there. And again, to remind folks that that is the area too, where we could do more public art integration and really enhance the public realm. I want to mention, the sidewalk just sort of stops in the grass there, but as development occurs, the idea is that the public realm could ideally be enhanced with, sidewalk cafes or activated uses on the ground level. Alexander did mention the skew, and this is how I get to and from 94. And so for those of you that have been there, you have to wait quite a while at that light because you can't actually go east and west at the same time. So by aligning that, that will reduce the wait times at that light, which will be an improvement for some. This is an intersection where there are some improvements for motor vehicles. There's a left turn lane added if you're going up north on Washington to get to Dowling Avenue and get to I-94, as well as a new right turn lane for that on-off ramp for I-94. And then also coming out of the Upper Harbor Terminal site, right now there's just one lane of traffic, but we are adding another lane and striping that for people to turn left, just anticipated some volumes there. Thanks.
Sarah, thanks so much for calling out those multimodal improvements. Those are very important. So this is an illustrative slide. I would imagine some of you may have seen this as this was released with the coordinated plan a few months ago. But this is just east of the intersection, and you can see a rendering of that two-way bike facility, boulevard treatment, the separated sidewalk for pedestrians, and then adjacent land use, and just a really active site. And that's really what we're hoping with these designs, that it promotes a place where people can interact, feel safe, and really just want to stick around. Our hopes are you come here for maybe an hour and you end up staying for 3 or 4 just because you're having such a good time, and it's such an inclusive and welcoming space. And as you follow this roadway into the horizon, that's actually the river and the entry point into the site. The next slide highlights the parkway, and it's challenging to see all the detail in this because this is a pretty wide area. This is about a mile of north-south connectivity, but you can see that that two-way bike facility and separated sidewalk coming into that T intersection. And then you can see that red colored area. It's a raised intersection. And that at that point, motorists would go right or left to travel north or south on the parkway. The park is just south of here. To the east, the other white shaded area are some land use developments for some housing. And you can see the separated bike facility and a separate pedestrian walkway to the south that would travel north along the river. And then as the parkway travels south, you can see it winds around the park and then dead ends at the cul-de-sac there right adjacent to the music venue. So that concludes the phase 1 roadway, which would start construction in 23 and conclude in 24. And then phase 2 of the parkway would likely start sometime 2025 or beyond and fully connect the parkway. Ciara, is there anything else you wanted to highlight with the parkway slide here?
Yeah, I'd like to add that although it's not shown, there will be a continuous riverfront trail. There's just some suggestive arrows there through the actual park site. And then even though the phase 1 parkway will stop where you see that cul-de-sac, the idea is that there would be a shared use path that would connect that cul-de-sac down to 33rd. so that with phase one, there would still be a way to walk and bike through the whole site. Wanted to mention too that if you can see in that T intersection where it's a raised intersection, the idea there is that once cars arrive to the site, that they feel like a guest, and it's really a place that's active for people walking and biking, and that will really slow cars down quite a bit. And then note too that the bike path will connect down to the riverfront, just that is a detail that's being worked on. So know that the bike trail doesn't dead end at that intersection. It will connect up with the riverfront trails.
Thank you, CR. Just a few other items to add. If the presenter could just zoom out just a tad. There's been a lot of questions, conversations.
Give me one moment, Alexander. I'm going to get back there for you.
Okay, sure thing, Craig. Thank you. So another piece with this obviously is transit. In the Upper Dowling piece, we talked about those existing transit stations. There is no direct transit to the UHT site right now because it's not a full-fledged active land use other than for its industrial uses. But we have had conversations with Metro Transit with the upcoming development of the site, and also are designing this parkway in a way that it is inclusive of Metro Transit service. Some of their needs include having an adjacent place to park, to turn around their vehicle, in a facility to take breaks with their drivers. So just know that we are having conversations with Metro Transit and that we are designing this parkway and the entire transportation system in a way that is inclusive of their transit service. We absolutely understand the need, the desires for transit service on this site, and want to continue to promote and refine those items. I think that's it for the parkway. Oh, one other thing
this is Craig. Would you like to make one comment on this one regarding the railroad crossing just before we leave this one?
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. So we do have an active rail crossing here, and we are thus providing a rail crossing treatment that is still being defined, but it would accommodate motorists, pedestrians, and cyclists. We absolutely want to ensure that with an active rail crossing, that the safety of those moving across those tracks is prioritized. So that design is forthcoming, but did want to bring that to your attention that we do have an active rail crossing there. Craig, thanks for bringing that up. Yep. We also do have some parking on the parkway. If you zoom in on that area, you can see the inclusion of some proposed parking spots. This would be primarily for attendees to the park. Throughout this parkway, we are being very minimalist in terms of the parking we provide. Some of the land uses are proposing parking, which is part of the coordinated plan, but it's still going to be a minimum. We understand that there does need to be some level of vehicle access, but we are trying to prioritize and promote biking, walking, and taking transit in terms of modal activity and transportation.
There you go.
And Craig, can you actually skip to the next slide? Thank you. So this rendering was part of the coordinated plan as well. And highlights the parkway when it's fully developed. You can see the two-way road with a red granite chip seal surface. Then you can see a healthy green boulevard, and then a two-way bike facility, another green boulevard, and then a large sidewalk, and then the river there. And the thing I really like about this is it really shows who has priority in this space, and it's pedestrians, right? They have the, I would say, the VIP views of the area. And it's something that Craig talked on in his earlier slide as one of our goals is providing a riverfront oriented experience and really prioritizing cyclist and pedestrian movements. This is from a view standpoint, this is the southern end of the site. You can see some of the light industrial buildings in the background, and those are land uses that have been proposed for the southern part of the site. But I just wanted to highlight this rendering and show what we envision the parkway looking like when it's fully developed. So 33rd Avenue North is our secondary access point. If any folks on this call have been there, the roadway is not in the greatest shape. There is no sidewalk. So even from a basic transportation standpoint, there's a lot of room for improvement. With this reconstruction, we would be adding in a shared use path on the south side that would cross over 3 active rail tracks. So there'll be 3 rail crossings at this area as well. And then we have a roundabout just before you get to the river. This is not to scale. We've showed this to other folks and there's been concern on the size of it and the potential turning speeds that could be achieved with some smaller vehicles. And so just know that that is not to scale. We'll be designing it to accommodate safe turning speeds. And this is primarily going to be used for those light industrial businesses on the southern side and for their vehicle movements, but also to provide a secondary access point into the site. And this would be developed in phase 1. And then you don't see it very well here. Actually, yeah, the 2nd Street North on the left side of this diagram would have that north-south connectivity. It's south of here, just a few blocks is Lowry Avenue North. And then you can also continue on 2nd Street North to head up to Dowling as well, and ultimately to Washington Avenue North. Sarah, anything else to add on this slide?
I would just add, I know someone had a question in the chat, is 33rd the same as Lowry? Lowry is a block to the south. We recognize the importance of the connection to Lowry. There's existing bicycle infrastructure there, and it's, the 32 runs on Lowry. So we know that's the closest higher frequency transit to the site. That's all, thanks.
Thank you. So rail crossings, we spoke about this with the Parkway on Dowling. There's 1 rail crossing, and then on 33rd, there's 3 rail crossings. So obviously with these rail crossings, they'll be ADA accessible. The image here below is of Humboldt Avenue North and is a potential treatment option. We haven't finalized what our treatment will be, but this is just an existing example of an at-grade rail crossing.
I also wanted just to chime in and just say that from what the work that's been done to date, from what the team understands, is that it's you mentioned the word active, and I want to stress that by active it means it's being used, but it's not that it's used as heavily as Humboldt, for example. Is that that's fair to say?
Yeah, we got a confirmation that the crossing at Dowling has about 4 crossings a week. So it's, yeah, you're right. It's active, but it's not high active use. So.
And slow moving.
Mm-hmm.
Slow moving, not necessarily, we don't know the length, but slow moving and that kind of frequency.
Exactly. Thanks for bringing that up, Lisa.
All right. Go ahead, Dan.
Yeah, thank you, Craig. Thank you, Lisa and Alexander. With that kind of highlights the key components of the public realm infrastructure that we wanted to highlight today. This is just an overall timeline of the project. As you can see right now, we're in January conducting a virtual open house in the midst of our engagement work. The process will seek to get to a 30% plan development and council layout approval later this year in 2021. But wanted to make sure the public is aware that we will be doing another round of engagement coming up in March with more opportunities for your input and another virtual, likely open house for you to attend and participate in. And I just wanted to make a note as we move to the next slide. There was a few folks that joined us right during the meeting. So thank you for attending. You have the Q&A function. Thanks to everyone that has been adding comments in there. We'll be taking those questions and comments and addressing them here shortly. So please feel free to continue to type out any of those questions. But wanted to just let folks know how they can learn more information and continue to stay involved. What you're seeing on the screen here is a screen grab of the Upper Harbor mpls.com website. On this homepage, there's a button highlighted in that blue box as you scroll down to get directly linked to the Public Realm Infrastructure Project page within the site. I would also note that if you continue scrolling on the homepage, you also have that Gov Delivery sign up option. So we have it in the chat. It's a great way to stay informed about all things Upper Harbor Terminal. Strongly recommend you register for email updates. And then I will also add into the chat the links to our public input opportunities. We have a community survey, which will be closing on February 5th, that we'd certainly appreciate any insights or ideas you could share, as well as an interactive map that starts to ask people how they would arrive at the site. So please do take an opportunity to share your thoughts and help us spread the word on those ongoing input opportunities. And with that, I we'll thank everybody and highlight contact information for our city staff presenting here today, Alexander and Nathan. This information is also available on the project website if you get to the public realm infrastructure section, but I just want to take a minute and keep this information available for everyone in attendance. And with that, we'll start to kind of populate our Q&A, and I can highlight just how that process is going to work. We have a number of comments and questions that have been received. We'll work through and take those in the order that we got them. We do have a few of folks calling in today. If someone would like to make a comment or ask a question while they're on the phone, you can hit *9, and that will let us know that your hand is raised and you have a comment you would like to make. If you're joining via the internet, we encourage you to continue using that Q&A chat box as well. And with that, we touched on a few questions, but I will just start by sharing some of the things. We had a comment here related to public art. I will just share that out with the group and acknowledge the comment and appreciate the acknowledgement that this is previously Dakota land, and that is an important piece of understanding the engagement that we've heard to date as part of this project. There was also another comment that had a question at the end that maybe I'll ask to you, Craig, and let you pass off to the rest of the team. Are there any plans to add more pedestrian-only bridges for other neighborhoods in North Minneapolis, including near North? There was also a comment similar to this in relation to land bridges, or the opportunity for land bridges. So maybe we'll pair those two together as an opportunity for pedestrians to connect to the Upper Harbor Terminal site.
Yep. I'll start to field that question, then I'll look for my colleagues at the City of Minneapolis to chime in as well, and starting with Alexander, and see if you'd like to see if Nathan has some comments there as well. At this point, there's a couple of phases that'll take place as far as construction. This is teeing this up for you, Alexander. There is a phase 1 of construction that'll occur, and then a phase 2. Alexander made comment about that as part of his overview of the different components of the public realm infrastructure along Dowling, the I-94 bridge, as well as the Parkway and 33rd. At this time, there is not any definitive answers or intent to construct additional pedestrian bridge crossings. It is something that we had heard in previous engagement activities based on feedback that was conducted as part of the Upper Harbor Terminal site itself. It's really good to understand and hear from the community's perspective what's important to them and what would be beneficial to them, even from a visionary perspective, as far as what types of improvements could help them arrive at the site and kind of move about safely and conveniently. But at this time, it's not included as part of phase 1 or phase 2. Alexander, would you like to expand on that at all? You're on mute there. I'll just pass the show mute.
I think you hit it pretty well on the head. Actually, not to be too confusing, but I would pass this to Nathan if he has any questions. He's been dealing with some of the larger kind of questions around land bridges around the city and works within Public Works around that topic.
Perfect.
Thanks, Alexander. Thanks, Craig. Nathan Costa here. So the question about land bridges or alternative access points, prioritizing specific bike and ped infrastructure. And Craig did a really good job summarizing is we're focusing on what's within the scope of this project. We know that is a priority. It's something we've heard quite a bit from the community. We're still working with MnDOT as they advance the 25294 study. And we don't know yet exactly the extent and scope of that project, but that is something we'd be tracking closely as MnDOT pursues that construction project in the next 3 to 5 years.
Thanks, Nathan. Dan?
Thanks. Yeah, so then another couple of questions that I'll pair together here. We got a question during the public art components asking if Northside residents were involved in the process of developing the themes. So that's the first question, and then I will just scroll down. There was another relevant one. When will there be more information about public art calls or how to get involved in that process?
Yep, Kristen, I'm gonna pass that right to you.
Great, thanks, Craig and Dan. So yes, the answer for the first question is yes, that Northside residents were involved. Juxta has been working on engagement and the public the public park planning process for some time now and engaging Northsiders in that process. So the themes grew out of priorities and things that were important that we heard through doing that engagement. Our team also includes many Northsiders who were really at the table developing those themes and thinking about concepts, public art concepts in terms of the park. And like I mentioned, it's kind of that's the starting place as we think about themes for this project and these connections to the neighborhood. And then finally, in terms of those themes in the park, we shared them with the CAC and at the Public Park Community Advisory Committee, many of whom are Northsiders, and got their input as we were developing those themes as well. And then I did see a question too about labyrinths planned, and I think that's an artful installation for sure. That ties in maybe to a space like the park where there is more just kind of area for doing an installation like that. And we actually did propose kind of like a labyrinth-like idea as a public art idea for the park. I'll drop in the chat in a minute a link to more about the park. So if you're interested in that, you can follow that link. And then finally, the last question about the process. So in terms of our process, we'll be coming back in the March engagement that Dan and Craig have mentioned, and we'll be sharing some more ideas to get feedback on related to public art and more specific ideas. Those will go then to, as we develop those, they'll eventually go to the Public Art Commission at the City of Minneapolis, and then that's the point where they will decide to, what they want to fund as part of this project, and then that will move into the call process that the city does, so that RFP process, and that timeline kind of overlays with this timeline. So the Public Art Commission piece would happen in June, so then I anticipate calls would happen after that.
Thanks, Kristen. And I would just note too, public art is a part of that community survey link that we shared, and we'd welcome more thoughts through that avenue as well. A couple of comments came in during the presentation. I'll just briefly share as well. There was a note that that lower Dowling area where Dowling and Washington meet is a busy traffic intersection, something we did acknowledge during the presentation as well, but wanted to note that. We also received a note from a resident regarding the example of bike bollards along 26th Avenue. So I'll just share that comment here. I do appreciate the note regarding safety and access concerns along those bridges. The next question that we received is, how is this project taking into consideration and avoiding furthering the issues of pollution related to health issues? This is a community that has historically been exposed to similar gentrification and industrial projects like this.
I'll start to tee this one up, and once again, look for city staff to chime in. I think from a, with respect to the infrastructure design itself and understanding how people are likely to arrive or maybe want to arrive at this site. I think Alexander did a really good job with his comments regarding prioritization of modes of transportation. I think, and I don't mean to give it any particular scale here, Alexander, but correct me here after I go through this, from a inverting the pyramid, so to speak, with that in level of prioritization and importance being on pedestrians, bicyclists, those people walking, rolling, or biking, taking transit, and then single occupancy vehicles from a public realm and transportation infrastructure standpoint. That gets at some of the potential impacts on pollution. But Alexander, I don't know if you have any additional comments to add there.
Yeah, I think there's a few things that, we at the City of Minneapolis have looked at around climate and how to address that. There's the Climate Action Plan and Minneapolis 2040 have set forth policy goals of reducing our greenhouse gas emissions by 80% by the year 2050. Motor vehicles are a significant contributor to greenhouse gas emissions. And so with our Transportation Action Plan, one of the goals is reducing average daily vehicle miles traveled. Right now, the average for Minneapolis residents is 15, and the goal by 2030 is to reduce that to 11 miles daily. And so in order to do that, we recognize that we need to provide better options. So biking, walking, and taking transit to get folks away from those vehicle trips. That's why on this site, we're promoting ped, and transit. Another critical component is the green infrastructure piece. So there's a lot of green space on the site. There's a lot of stormwater that we're working through. We don't have all those designs vetted out yet to share with the public, but in March we'll have more robust examples. But those are ways in which we are trying to reduce climate impacts through transportation reductions and then through green infrastructure treatments.
I would just add one thing. It's a really good question. It's coming up again on another question I see in the Q&A about the urban canopy. And I can't understate how important this is in looking at the historical development patterns that have put North Minneapolis in particular at a disadvantage to other parts of the community as it relates to the lack of trees, the lack of urban canopy, and what's created somewhat of a urban heat island. And right now we have an undeveloped site that does not have any greening and lacks trees. So something that we'd be working closely with our project partners on is really establishing that tree canopy and working to prioritize that as much as possible, not only along Dowling Ave, but along the Parkway, and really greening up the site, addressing greenhouse gas emissions, but also the urban canopy.
Thanks, Nathan. As you mentioned, that kind of rolls right into this urban tree canopy question. I think there's another component to that that maybe we can just briefly touch on as we answer that question. So are there current plans or conversations about that tree canopy? Also, will this be addressed under the green stormwater infrastructure management? Are there district-wide systems that can be utilized besides stormwater or energy? Not sure if we want to add to that answer that Nathan just provided.
I'll only clarify that as it relates to energy, that's not a utility that the city or public works has authority over. So that would be a private-based system. We would be more focused on the delivery of potable water, the treatment, discharge of storm water, and any sanitary systems.
Nathan, that aligns directly with another question received. So maybe just to confirm, the question was, how is the XL cable being handled from the public realm perspective?
Good question. I saw that one. I just realized that. So the Public Works and Community Planning Economic Development have been working with Excel on relocating the overhead transmission lines through the site. Currently, the lines run right through the middle of the site. So we are working with them to get those relocated to open up the area for not only our public works infrastructure for development and getting them off the area that it would be dedicated for parkland and getting them further set back from the river. So that would happen independent of the public realm and the site development and in advance. So that would be one of the first things the public would be seeing happen at the site is the relocation of those Excel lines. Perfect.
Next question we received is, has Metro Transit discussed what type of transit will be implemented along the Parkway / north-south connection? Local bus route, BRT, streetcar, etc. ?
Nathan, I might kick that one directly back to you too. I know we just talked about this previously. Go right ahead.
Yeah, I would say that this is a consistent question that's come up from the community over the past couple of years that I've been involved in the project. And we take it very seriously, and we've been working closely with Metro Transit, as Alexander previously noted, on making sure we're designing the site to be able to serve transit. Right now, I think it's primarily focusing on the local service stuff that could be more flexible in the near term. The one thing I would want to call out that people are aware of is, as a part of the 25294 study, that will be specifically looking at options for highway BRT on 94 252. So there are a number of things that we are tracking for this site right now, knowing that transit has been a consistent priority and theme that stakeholders would like us to see integrated to the extent possible with this project. We see it being critical to its success.
The next question was related when we were walking through the future parkway, asking, what does light industrial mean?
That's a great question. I'd say the general definition is light industrial is manufacturing that typically goes to the direct consumer. So packaged food goods, watches, things that are typically produced, and when that production is done, it's either mailed to a retail place to sell, or it's distributed directly to the consumer. And typically that type of industrial manufacturing has much lower carbon emissions and usually a bit more sustainable in an urban environment in comparison to heavy manufacturing of coal and other things like that that have a lot more carbon offsets.
Thanks, Alexander. We got a comment related to the 33rd Avenue piece there. Roundabouts are not pedestrian friendly, especially for the disabled. There's also a couple of questions relevant to this that I'll try and fold in here as well. I think one question has been, are there any thoughts into having a dedicated bike pedaling on over 94 South, Dowling, and north of 33rd? Additionally, I did want to fold in the question, will the service road that runs off of 33rd North Avenue along those railroad tracks remain during and after phase one? So a couple of 33rd Avenue questions.
Alexander, do you, well, I just asked if city staff wants to comment on that. Dan, I want to unpack that a little bit. There was just a general comment about the roundabouts not being
That's right.
friendly from their perspective, and especially for the disabled. And then there was a couple of questions, one of which I understood, or the way I received it was about, are there, and the way what I heard you say is that, are there additional ideas or thoughts for bicyclists or pedestrian crossings south of Dowling, north of 33rd? Is that what I heard?
That's right.
Yeah, so I think that one gets a little, that gets back to an earlier comment about additional land bridges or pedestrian overpasses, and that being something that isn't immediately included as part of the first phase one or phase two. That's part of the infrastructure project here. But also, I think it was Nathan or Alexander had commented that it's feedback that we had heard in previous engagement as part of the Upper Harbor Terminal site, and it's also feedback and comments that have been heard for other projects that may be going on in the area. I think Nathan commented that there's coordination City of Minneapolis is doing with the Highway 252 I-94 project through this area as well, and that has not determined all of its project alternatives at this point either, just now getting into their environmental impact statement. Other questions about 33rd specifically with pedestrian access, bicycle access? Dan, did you hear in that question?
Yeah, that's it. I appreciate that. I think there's two things I'd like to hit on here. One would be that 33rd asking if it would be continued and stay open as part of phase one and after phase one.
Yes. Yes, it will.
Thank you for that. I have lost that in my chat, but we'll clear that out. So going back in the order we received, I just wanted to, the next question is, elevation of Upper Dowling is at the same level as a 4-story building at the site, Lower Dowling. Is this a concern for the public realm infrastructure project?
Nathan or Alexander, would you like to comment on that from the city's perspective?
Yeah, I can take that one. I think it is, because I think it will make us be really mindful of the types of designs we do, both the intersection treatments, knowing that that may lead to some increased speeds from vehicles, making sure we have really good visibility between people walking and biking, and be really mindful of what type of intersection treatments we do, especially as we get closer to the on and off ramps at I-94. So much like a lot of things, we're very early on with our design and making sure we take that into consideration as far as like how all the modes are interacting. So thanks for pointing that out.
Next, we received a question, is it possible to add a greenhouse feature similar to what was used at the Walker? And I am anticipating that this is related to the park, and there's a few questions related to elements and park components that maybe we can address together with this question of a possibility of a greenhouse feature.
This has the feeling of a site development and design question, but if we can maybe try to answer this relevant to the park, I'll pass this to the city, Nathan and or Alexander as well.
Yeah, I can speak to some of the park questions I've seen in general. So the park board is going through their engagement process. That's ongoing. They will be providing those concepts to the public shortly. I know they were exploring boat access, but that has not been finalized yet. They were also exploring some level of public room access or public restroom access as well. And that could be with the park and also with some of the adjacent land uses, but that has not been finalized, and that is forthcoming. Greenhouse as well. I think that's a potential idea, but I haven't seen any traction on such on that option either. I'm not sure if there's any other park related questions that I missed.
I think we can acknowledge that and we can pass it along to our peers at the park board so they have that.
Yeah, thank you, Nathan. Thank you, Alexander. Next question was, will commercial vehicles use the residential area transit nodes?
I might ask my colleagues at the city of Minneapolis to maybe help me interpret that question. It seems as though the residential areas as transit nodes. How do you interpret that, Nathan?
So I'll do my best to interpret it, but I think I understand what the person asking the question means. Is there's very limited access points to North Minneapolis when the freeway was built 50 years ago. We understand that, and this project is recommending that we maintain those important routes such as Dowling. We don't want to route any additional commercial traffic through the neighborhoods. So we're recommending that we maintain Dowling as Lindale is the major routes so that the additional residential areas are not further impacted given the limited amount of access from the freeway of North Minneapolis. I did see additional question of like if access is going to change to and from the north and the freeway via Weber Park. And I'll just answer it similarly, saying that the interchange at Dowling is proposed to not be changed with this project. So it'll still be all the 4 on and off ramps from Dowling at 94 here.
Yeah, thanks for bringing us into that next question. Just to confirm, there was, what will the exit options be to the north towards Weber Park? I know, and Nathan addressed that. Alexander, did you have anything to add to that, or does that sound like the right answer there?
So I know the park board is exploring continuing the Parkway North along the proposed phase 1 development. There's still a few additional pieces of property that they would need to acquire before that's feasible. So that's more of something that they're exploring and aspiring to, but has not been confirmed yet. So for now, in terms of north-south connectivity for cyclists, it would be along Washington Avenue North. There are existing bicycle lanes on street that do connect to Weber Camden and also to North Mississippi Regional Park.
Great, thank you. This is a question about the Botno light rail line is being redesigned, as I understand. Has this been anticipated in the UHT infrastructure design?
I can take that one as well. So we've been working really closely with our other peers here at the city, both in public works and planning and economic development, as it's related to the reinvestigation of the alignment of the Botno light rail project. Given that we're primarily just on the intersection at Washington and Dowling and a short stretch of Dowling, I guess the area of exposure to a potential reroute is small. And if that happened to go through the planning process and alignment was changed to interact with Upper Harbor, we'd be able to pivot our project and address that. But we're working very closely with them. We know there's a lot of potential routes to the north side, and we'll be following that one very closely.
Thanks, Nathan. Next question to the group is, can you commit to not using anti-homelessness architecture?
Does the city want to make a statement regarding that? This seems to be related to Upper Harbor Terminal site development and building development outside of public infrastructure. Nathan?
Yeah, I'd first just start by saying that any building would go through its normal approval process through the Planning Commission, and that would go through its independent reviews at the city that's subject to the zoning code. What I can say is that if we are looking at public art, that's something we can take really closely into consideration. I don't deal as much with public art. I don't know, Kristen, if you might be able to help me out a little bit there, asking for a lifeline as you guys are starting to discuss public art with the communities.
Yeah, I think, I guess I don't have a clear answer right now either, but just that's definitely a value that Juxta has. And when, you know, in terms of public art, like Preston said, it's mostly those infrastructure pieces that kind of integrated into that. But I think that point is taken, and we'll bring that forward into as we think about how art gets integrated.
Thanks, Kristen.
And Kristen, thank you for that. Next question is, has there been consideration of how people could access this space via boat or waterways? Is this even allowable?
Yeah, so I know that's been a really popular question with the park board process in terms of having boat access for kayaking, stand-up paddle, etc. I know they are exploring that, but since I can't speak directly as to where that is at, as that would be a park board decision, since it'd be access via the park.
Thanks, Alexander. The next question, I think there's two that we can fold together here. The first one being, will there be things like small parks for kids or skate features like at Juxtaposition? There was also a question of areas suitable for meditation, yoga, and Tai Chi, perhaps.
I think those are all, you know, great comments from a public art standpoint in terms of the ability that we can influence some of the infrastructure. And I think those are also really good comments for the park as well, that we can relay that to our colleagues at the park board in terms of when they start thinking about programming. Like I said, they have not finalized their park designs yet, so I think there's still opportunity to provide that input. So, you know, we'll relay that information to them. And we'd also encourage those on this call to continue to engage in those forthcoming park board engagement opportunities. Anything else to add, Nathan or Christian, on that?
I'll just add that, yeah, I put the link in the chat to the draft park concepts, and then the park includes the larger area, kind of the larger park space, which is basically you know, what you will arrive to along Dowling as you come down Dowling. But then the whole riverfront is also a part of the parkland, and so I know there have been conversations about, you know, thinking about opportunities for like with that linear park, you know, what if there were like skate features along the way, or things you could interact with along the way as you're traveling along that bike and pedestrian path, because that's all part of the park as well. So yeah, definitely we'll pass that comment on, and yeah, please visit that link if you're interested in checking out some of the initial concepts.
Thanks, Kristen. Next question here, there's a few of them, a couple that are a little outside of the public realm infrastructure component, but just, will there be providing job training? Will it be developers? Is there a plan to recruit those who dwell in North Minneapolis? And then lastly, when will the AUAR be available for public comment?
I can take that one. So I'll first start by saying that the city is looking at ways to do inclusive procurement, and we can bring this comment back to our finance and procurement staff, as there will be a lot of public infrastructure work to be bid out, and seeing how there might be additional ways to increase participation on small underutilized businesses when this work is bid out for contractors. So that's something I can bring back to the city to advance those conversations. And then secondly, the AUAR, community planning and economic development will have more details to share as it relates specifically to the AUAR, but it's anticipated that the AUAR process will start in a public fashion in the March timeline.
Perfect, thanks, Nathan. I'll share this live. I won't read the whole comment, but I think there is a good question in here about how events, traffic to and from the site due to events could be affected, and how this project is considering those increased traffic times.
I'll start to answer this question here and then look for my city staff colleagues to chime in, likely maybe Nathan and then Alexander. This is also relevant. I think the comment was made relevant to the reconstruction of the Dowling Avenue Bridge and that interchange as part of the 94-252 project. And the understanding in this person's comment here that it was stated that as part of that project, it wasn't anticipated that this bridge and or interchange would be modified. Then followed up with, well, how are we incorporating or preparing for the events as part of the Upper Harbor Terminal site and the potential traffic impacts that they'll have from there. Yes, that is correct. Under previous engagement as part of the 94-252 project, the Department of Transportation had stated that that wasn't initially an understanding of any modification of this bridge structure. Nathan or Alexander can comment on the capital improvement plans, that the way they understand them. It's not currently in the DOT's capital improvement program for any improvements at this location. How they're handling the events, Nathan, you can maybe speak to the traffic study work that has taken place and otherwise, and how that's been incorporated into our designs.
Yeah, thank you, Craig. So right now on the webpage, we do have some information that have typically been asked through the coordinated plan as well as our engagement process here about traffic. Dan can probably share that in the chat so people have that available, but I'll start to highlight it for the group here. We have laid out a number of strategies that we are looking to advance with the development team as it relates to the venue. There's a number of strategies that the city has employed at a number of venues across the city, such as Target Center, US Bank, TCF, Target. I can go on and on. The city has a wealth of experience with Final Four, the Super Bowl, and X Games kind of goes on. But as it relates to rush hour and the traffic, is one of the strategies is trying to time some of the events so it doesn't coincide with some of the biggest demands of the transportation system, as well as prioritizing and setting up shuttle system, remote parking areas, and not relying fully on just single occupancy vehicles to get to the site. There will be very limited parking. There will be some available on site, but most of it is going to rely on a significant amount of people coming via other modes, whether it's walking, biking, transit, shuttles, what have you, and supplementing that with traffic control agents, drop off, pickup zones, and a number of strategies and solutions that really help mitigate and offset the impacts that the venue would have in the area.
Appreciate that, Nathan. I guess I will again share these and not read the full comment, but I think the first question is here: is the city, county, Met Council, MnDOT, or others planning to combine or go after certain funding mechanisms to support transportation infrastructure?
Good question. So right now, I think Public Works is at a total, I think, of 4 or 5 grants that we've already been awarded via this project. So we've been very successful in obtaining grants. We do have state bonding of $15 million for the site. We've won a Transportation Economic Development Infrastructure grant through the Minnesota Department of Economic Development. We received a MnDOT grant for a local partnership program, as well as pursuing county partnership funds. So to date, we have been very successful in pursuing a number of grants. And I did forget, we did win another federal grant for highway performance. So we have been scrounging up as many grants and been very successful to date. So good question.
Great, thanks. Also received, is this project large enough to contain a community garden? I think this is referring to those boulevard spaces that Ciara had mentioned are public realm components.
I'll maybe see if Ciara wants to offer some comment regarding the public realm space opportunities that we do have there, those green canvases that you kind of talked about, and then maybe if anyone else wants to comment relevant to the parkway space itself.
An answer would be it depends. I would say a community garden is usually a little bit more large scale than what we might have room for in the boulevard space. So that's how I would answer that one.
How about from the city's perspective on the parkway or future parkway design or anything in there? It's a different type of plot size, but Nathan?
I think this is one of those comments we'll have to bring back to the CPED and development team, a little outside of what would be included in the public right-of-way.
Craig, I know you had responded earlier. I just wanted to share this question live related to those land bridges or pedestrian routes. Is there an avenue to make voices heard for those opportunities?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, from my perspective, maybe just regarding the other projects that are occurring in the area, there is additional engagement that will be occurring as part of that 252 I-94 environmental impact statement. That project extends from Highway 610 on its northern limits in Brooklyn Park, all the way through Brooklyn Center, City of Minneapolis, down to the 4th Street exit there at downtown. So it does expand or span through this area. And my understanding, and I do know that there will be additional engagement as part of that project. So be sure to keep your ears open and stay engaged regarding the process. I think these comments we can share with our colleagues. We've been working with the Minnesota Department of Transportation as part of this Upper Harbor Terminal Public Realm Infrastructure Project as well, and we're sharing all of the feedback that we receive, not only from this engagement, but understanding other projects that are ongoing as well. Nathan or Alexander, anything to add there?
Before they add, I was gonna plug the Gov Delivery site. So if you go in and start to get information on this project, there are opportunities where you can click on to other projects to get reminders and information on.
Perfect.
Great. The next two questions I'll answer, I think these fall a little outside of the scope of the project, but did want to note them. Will there be public restrooms in the park and your housing without purchases required, and level of increased police presence will be required to protect and serve any new residents and capital coming into North Minneapolis?
City staff from a park programming standpoint.
We can bring that comment back to the park board. I know that public restrooms is something that they're actively considering. No updates to share on that just yet. We're a little ahead of their planning process, but we can bring that back to them. And I would have to follow up as well with other internal city agencies as it relates to any change in services for emergency, whether it's fire or police. So I don't have an answer for that right now. Other than as I had mentioned for the event management plan, there would be extra services needed for larger events, but don't have details to share on that right now.
Thanks, Nathan. Next question is, how will you assure that parking will be accessible for local residents in this area?
I'll start that answer here, I think. And Alexander had some of the comment, if you recall, as part of his discussion regarding not only the parking along the parkway itself, but also he made a comment as part of that there is it's intended to have parking available as part of the development that occurs at the Upper Harbor Terminal site, in addition to the on-street parking, you know, as we consider back along Dowling and the side streets thereof. Of the other components of the project, the on-street parking would still be maintained in the areas where it's possible. Similarly with 33rd, just the same. Alexander, anything to add there?
Yeah, I could just add just a few things. So the draft coordinated plan proposes several parking structures. These are part of the development, and as each development goes through the city's site plan and development review process, they would determine the off-street parking calculations that would be approved for each project. But for phase 1, parcel 7B, which is right along Washington and Dowling, is proposed to have 300 spaces. That's a temporary design. In the long term, it would be redeveloped for hospitality and additional housing. And then in phase 2, parcel 7A is proposed to have 270 community hub parking stalls and a potential mobility hub. So these are the proposed parking. As I said, this still has to go through the city's development review process where those parking calculations are determined and approved. But those would be parking to supplement demand at the site, as well as existing parking that exists on Washington and 2nd Street North.
Thanks, Alexander. The next question we received is acknowledging that Dowling is a very busy street, and as we showed, there's that shared use path on the south side of the layout. There's some concerns about that. Has that been looked at compared to other options of lanes going along both east and west? Both sides of the road, I think, is how I interpret that.
Yeah, I mean, I would ask if Ciara wants to comment on that from a preliminary design standpoint.
Yes, we did look at alternatives that had both, one-way pairs of bike lanes, but because we are in such a constrained space, and there was a strong desire to separate cyclists from traffic, that's what led us to the shared use path on the south side of the street. And then, as we did mention, as soon as we have more space, right where Dowling is at the on and off ramps and over the bridge, then we are able to separate those users. So a goal was up in that area on Upper Dowling. We didn't want to take any property. And there's also people's, stairs and retaining walls we're looking to avoid as well.
Right. Appreciate that, Ciara. Next question is addressed to Mr. Vaughn, referring to that 33rd Avenue North. If this would remain open during phase 1 construction, the question is the service road that runs north along the western border of parcel 5, will it remain open? It's currently used, the road to enter parcel 5 to get to the North Star Community River or rowing river access, an ADA compliant walkway and dock at the shoreline.
I'm going to lean into my colleagues at the city to see if Alexander, from a phasing perspective, I'm asking you initially, but I know Nathan may have the answer just the same as well.
Yeah, I can hop in. So there's plans for a private service drive actually that would go along parcels 5 and 6. So it would connect into 33rd near that roundabout in that original slide that we showcased. So this would be a private service road. It'd be able to service the parcels here. Not sure if I could comment about how that would connect to the rowing access though. But happy to follow up on that, more nuanced question offline as well.
Appreciate that, Alexander. Next is, doesn't the park board manage boulevard trees? Why are they not part of the Upper Harbor Terminal Public Realm Collective?
I can answer that one. Park Board does manage the boulevard trees, and Park Board has been a great partner with us the whole way, and they've been actively working with us throughout the entirety of the project.
Okay, thanks, Nathan. I would just say we got a couple of comments to acknowledge about the anti-homelessness architecture. I would encourage anyone interested in that topic to please feel free to use the community survey and highlight that as a potential public art or public realm component that you would like to see, and stay involved. As Kristen mentioned, that public art will remain an important topic as part of March engagement. Next question we received is, will there be another access road near to Washington Avenue behind the buildings away from the river?
Yeah, so Dan, I believe that's in reference to the private service drive. That would be just adjacent to the rail track and would serve those southern parcels and those light industrial uses. Yeah, so you can actually see it in this diagram if you just move your mouse up a little bit. So that's the private service drive. Yep, right there.
Right.
And then with phase 2 development, we would connect into the roundabout. So you see the roundabout kind of fades out on the northeastern leg of it.
I'm sorry.
Yep. That would connect into phase 2 of the Parkway roadway system as well.
Great. Appreciate that answer. Next question we received, and we just have a few more to address here tonight. Construction will be happening for 2+ years. What will that look like for current residents? Sound pollution, pollution in the air, water, housing value. What will construction entail?
Alexander or Nathan, do you want to provide those years of construction for phase 1 and phase 2, and maybe give some time frames for those phases?
I can take that one. So currently, right now, we're proposed to start construction in 2023. I'm guessing that it will take at least all of 23 and parts of 24. We don't have the exact scheduling if we're going to be doing Dowling first or the Parkway first, but we do recognize that parts of the project that are existing streets as it relates to like Dowling or Washington would have some impacts in the neighborhood as far as like potentially limiting access, mobility. We would work on all the staging plans and have additional outreach with the community, a communications plan, and it would be subject to all the regulations the city has for noise, hours of operation, and any pollution that would be associated to mitigate against that. So being a planner on the front end, I don't have the exact details. We're still very early on. We don't have the construction plans or staging available, but as we advance there, we'd have additional meetings with businesses, nearby stakeholders, residents to talk through what the impacts would be of construction.
Thank you, Nathan. Next question is, what happened with the Dowling Experience project? Planning for the Dowling Bridge.
Yeah, so the Dowling Bridge, when I went through that slide, I talked about the minimum treatment option, which would be that bollard two-way bicycle facility like 26th Avenue North. Conversations are ongoing with MnDOT about what we can do above and beyond that. And also a long-term vision with them in terms of a reconstruction or a redecking of the bridge. We just haven't finalized those pieces to a point where we can present concepts and ideas to the public. So the Dowling Experience and the Dowling Bridge is still a forthcoming conversation. When we come to the March open house, we plan to have more details around that and more concrete next steps as well. But like I said, we're still collaborating with the Minnesota Department of Transportation around the Dowling Bridge, but we do recognize there's been a lot of comments from the public regarding that experience, potential opportunities for the future, and just how critical of a connection that is to getting Northside residents to the site. So we definitely do recognize that and are working hard to provide a strong option for public consumption.
I think just to piggyback on that ever so slightly is that as we are taking feedback and input as part of not only tonight's open house, but the survey that's ongoing until February 5th, we're looking for that visionary, ideas and creativity from the public to share their thoughts regarding how they see themselves experiencing the public realm infrastructure as they look to arrive at the site or move along Dowling, the Parkway, 33rd, et cetera. So that is part of that survey, and please share your thoughts there, because we do want that visionary aspect, even though it may be understood that initially that might not be feasible given the bridge, the status of the bridge and how much additional weight it may be able to take, but we do want that visionary aspect for future identification.
Thanks, Craig. Wrap up here with two last questions. One specific to this project is, what about parking for commercial vehicles for both the music venue and for light industrial?
I can take that one. So we focused a lot on the access at 33rd and some of the parcels with the service drive. A lot of the intent there is to make sure we don't have those bigger vehicles along the parkway and adjacent to the river. So a lot of what we have planned for that access is to get those trucks servicing the businesses on that service drive, and they would be designed to be more heavy duty nature, look more like a wide alley to accommodate some of those bigger trucks, as well as the larger trailers for the music events. So that was like the intent and vision of what we planned for there, so that it's very much away from that water's edge and the trails.
Thanks, Nathan. The last question, we shared the draft coordinated plan link, and that might help to be a good resource to explore. But for the music venue, how will local musicians be prioritized in that space? Will ticket prices and parking be accessible to local and longtime Northside residents?
I'll just have to answer this one by saying I'll be able to bring this one back to the team. This is a little outside of our expertise in public works, but we appreciate the comment and we'll make sure to bring that back to CPAD and the development team.
Great, thank you, Nathan. That is the full list of questions that we received tonight. Do appreciate everyone taking time to hear and learn more about the public realm infrastructure and to ask your questions and participate today. We did highlight those ways to stay involved. So I will just turn it over if anyone else on the project team would like to share some parting words.
No, from my perspective, I'll kick it to City Minneapolis staff. We appreciate your participation, and again, can't underscore enough, as Dan mentioned, we appreciate your participation, Nathan and Alexander.
Yeah, I'll just say thank you, everyone, for all the great questions and the time. We had upwards of 70 attendees, which is a great turnout. We're excited to be back in March. You know, you can continue to contact us with questions. There's a lot to this project, we understand. There's just a lot of moving pieces. And so we're happy that folks are engaged and interested in continuing to ask those good questions.
And with that concludes the meeting. Everyone have a good night and a good rest of the week. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.